Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Buck Brief. On this episode, Jayme Franklin joins. She is the founder of Conservateur. She is a conservative Generation Z commentator, right? You're Gen Z, which is exciting. I'm an old millennial, so I feel like, I used to be hip. But we're going to talk about the Kamala campaign here. And first off, I didn't know that you're going to have to explain this to me, okay? So you're coming from a young female conservative perspective. This Call Her Daddy interview that Kamala did, I had heard of this before, this podcast. I've heard a couple of clips of it. What I was shocked by was how popular this apparently is. Like, tell me about this, because I feel like I had no idea there were so many young women out there who want to hear the kind of stuff that this woman's talking about. So, well, where did this Call Her Daddy phenomenon come from?
I know it's honestly a little depressing. I think it's rated right now the second most popular podcast in America,
Yeah.
behind Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, I feel like, is what a lot of guys listen to, which, he brings on scientists, Amazon expert, people who explore the Amazon and everything.
I listened to that Amazon guy, by the way. That was really interesting. I liked the bee lady, too, who does all the bees, like bzzz, I don't know if you saw that one. Anyway, that's Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he has some interesting guests on that I think bring a lot of interesting information. Call Her Daddy is very different. She started a few years ago. I've never listened really. I actually listened to the Kamala episode for this podcast. I had to do it for everyone, but that was the only podcast I've ever listened to of hers. But it's huge with young women. I think it's a huge part of the culture that we're seeing today. And I think a lot of conservatives were really shocked after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, how popular abortion is with women. And I definitely think her and other outlets are exactly the reason for that. It's, just the epitome of fifth wave feminism and just cultural decay and sexual promiscuity.
Yeah, the stuff that I was hearing, and again, I don't want to sound like, I got a little touch of gray in the beard here. I don't want to sound like the old man who's like, what are the kids talking about these days? But the stuff, what she gets into on that podcast, I've seen some clips. It's like very graphic. I mean, it's about as graphic as words can be. And Kamala Harris wants to be president. She's sitting down. She does very few interviews. Why does she choose Call Her Daddy as the podcast that she's going to sit down with among just a handful that she has done?
I mean, they're definitely vying for the young woman vote. That's the base of the Democratic Party now. It's all young women. I mean, someone tweeted out that Trump went on Dave Ramsey last week to talk about the economy, and Kamala went on Call Her Daddy to talk about abortion and all of those issues. And so definitely shows the contrast on, where the base of the party and the issues are. I was in shock. I went on her Twitter, the Call Her Daddy Twitter, and I typed in some keywords when we were pulling up some graphics to put out on the Conservateur, and I was actually in shock by some of the stuff I read on there. It's really depraved. Like it's very upsetting and depressing that this is what a lot of women, especially young women who are coming of age and might not know better, and this is what they are consuming on a regular basis. And I think, we need to have media outlets that attract more women and counteract these messages, because it's, I think, really damaging to young women if they behave if they follow the advice of Alex Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, you're a young conservative woman. You've got Conservateur, which you founded online, and so I know there are some places for women who have a young women who have a right of center opinion to go to, but it does feel like the ecosystem, especially for women aged 16 to 30, or 18 to 35, or however you want to slice the demographic, it's dominated by these far left voices, like young women have been, men are going in the other direction. Young men are going the other direction. Young men are becoming increasingly conservative. It feels like young women are becoming increasingly left wing. What's going on?
I could not agree more. And I think a lot of conservative men like yourself, you're not going to go and pick up Vogue magazine, right, when you're at the airport like women do. So I don't think a lot of you guys saw this coming. But that was really the reason why I started the Conservateur back in 2020, because I always wanted to go into fashion, actually. And I was interested in being a journalist, and I went to fashion school and all these things when I also went to Berkeley, but I did both. And I was just like, I don't belong here. Like, there's no place for this. And when I was at Berkeley as well, I just couldn't believe I grew up going to Catholic school my entire life and just going to Cal Berkeley and seeing the culture there, especially with young women and kind of along the lines of what they talk about in Call Her Daddy. I was shocked by it, but they've definitely captured the young woman vote. We need to dig ourselves out of this hole. I'm really happy with the way that the male vote is going, which is why I think you see like Trump going on Theo Vaughn and stuff like that, and with the Nelk boys. But Call Her Daddy, I don't know the political calculus of how that's going to come out, because I think it could be really off-turning to a lot of especially male independents. And I think also in light of Hurricane Helene, it just looked very tone deaf. And the fact that she doesn't even do any other interviews. And I listened to her interview, and it was once again another word salad where I learned absolutely nothing about any of her policies or what she plans to do.
Yes, it is the case that Kamala Harris does remind everybody why she doesn't do interviews when she does interviews. So we'll come back to that in 1 second, Jayme. Our sponsor right now is Mantis X, and Mantis X makes an incredible tool. I'm a gun owner. I was just telling Jayme before. Her husband likes guns. I like guns. I had to tell my wife recently, honey, I need a second gun safe. So I like guns maybe a little too much. I don't know. I like guns, but I can't always get out to the range. The range that I use here is about an hour away. So what do? Well, if I want to work on really the most important part, especially with the basics as a beginner, most important part of accurate shooting is trigger pull. And if you want a tool where you can work on your trigger pull and your sight alignment here at home, Mantis X is absolutely for you. You'll be amazed at it, how quickly you improve your shooting accuracy. It's just those small mechanics that make all the difference. You'll just enjoy yourself more at the range. You'll become a more proficient shooter. Go to mantisx.com. That's MANTISX.com today. All right, Jayme, we're a few weeks away from the election. It's crazy, right? I think 3 and change from the actual election day. And all of a sudden, she does a flurry of media. She does all these interviews. What's up with that? I thought she was avoiding the press. Is it because she's losing? Do you think this was always part of their plan? What's the game here?
Well, it's definitely interesting because they were hiding her for a very long time. So to me, that signals, I think that there's some internal polling showing that people are uncomfortable with her. I think Democrats did a really smart job by moving her in at the last minute, like, what was it, 2.5 months before this election, so we could purposely not learn more about her policies and honestly her incompetency when it comes to interviewing and being able to explain anything. I agree a lot with Trump. I don't think she's an incredibly smart person, and I think she can't think on her feet. I think she performed actually better than I thought she would in the debate, because she memorizes the lines and can get them out. But when it's off the cuff, she's obviously not doing well. But it kind of feels like a Hail Mary here. So I think we should feel happy that they're feeling like they have to go here.
Did you hear in the 60 Minutes interview, there's a clip where she says, I have the quote because I really want it. This is the word for word quote. Okay. Well, the question is something about Netanyahu, right? Like, basically, do you stand with Netanyahu? Here's what she says. Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region. That is a way of saying we did some things that made some stuff happen to some things that were also things.
Yeah, I think she's also the Democratic Party's in a really tough place right now, honestly, because their base is just anti-Trump. So they kind of have like some of these never Trump Republicans that are kind of probably a little bit more conservative on a lot of policies, especially with the economy and on some social issues. And then they have Palestine flag-wielding, blue-haired, they, them, pronoun people also in their party. So anytime they speak, they're going to cause divisions within their party. So I do think in a way, like, once again, I do think it's also she can't explain a lot of these policies herself because she doesn't do the background and prep needed for it. But I also think she's scared about like alienating people in their base because it's a very fractured party when you actually get down to the issues.
Yeah, and I think that you see that also with the Israeli-Palestinian issue, right? Which comes up in the context of Netanyahu. She's out there trying to tell everybody that we stand with Israel, but she doesn't stand with Netanyahu, and she's not sure about the Israeli military response to October 7th, and you and I are sitting here talking on the anniversary of October 7th. I don't think she can have it both ways with this. I think Democrats are caught a little bit here with the both sidesism of, well, I stand with Hamas, but I also stand with Israel. You can't actually do that.
I agree, and I've heard that her polling with Arab Americans in Michigan is really bad because of that as well. And so I think it's hard for us to believe that people wouldn't stand with Israel because our party is so pro-Israel, and just like honoring those lives that were lost, and the hostages still in there because of the Biden administration's incompetence. And so but I think she's in a tough place because I do think probably it breaks down, maybe if I had to guess, like 70-30 within her party. And that's a big issue for the people who are pro-Palestine. A lot of them may hold out votes for her because they feel so passionately about that.
We'll come back into the campus protests. Have you seen, by the way, I have friends in New York City sending me video from today of some of these protests that are happening out on the streets in solidarity with Palestine and Hamas, or the Palestinians rather, and Hamas. So we'll get into this kind of madness on campus in just a second. Tunnel to Towers, our sponsor here. Jerry Padgett enlisted in the U.S. Navy and deployed multiple times to Iraq and Afghanistan. He's one of the heroes remembered by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, and for good reason. While on patrol in Afghanistan, Jerry was injured by an improvised explosive device. He suffered injuries to his spinal cord and brain. Now, nothing can reverse the damage done to Jerry's body, but through the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, we can honor heroes like Jerry in gratitude for their tremendous sacrifice. Thanks to friends like you, Jerry and his family moved into a new smart home at the Foundation's Let Us Do Good Village in Florida, where he can live independently thanks to specially adaptive technologies. Nothing can repay the price of freedom, but your donation now can change the lives of those who selflessly sacrifice for our communities and our country. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. That's T2T.org. I graduated 20 years ago. You graduated, what, like 5 years ago or something, right? So you have more of a, am I
4
close?
4 years ago. Don't age me, Buck.
3 years ago? 2? How far?
4. I can't believe
4.
it.
Okay. All right. I was like right in the zone. God. 4 years ago. So you were on campus recently. You know what it's like? Honestly, like there were a lot of, there was a lot of pro-Palestine sentiment and stuff. I went to Amherst, a lot of that there 20 years ago. So a long time ago, we were like, riding chariots to our classes and everything. But were you surprised by the crazy stuff going on after October 7th on campus? Or were you like, no, that's just how it is? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, was this just the breakthrough of the reality that there's this pro-terrorist, anti-Semitism, lunacy, particularly across elite schools, by the way? I mean, you went to Berkeley.
I was not shocked at all going to Berkeley. It wasn't as big, actually, when I was at Cal. So I was at Cal between 2016 to 2020. So the big issue when I was there was, remember the fake whipped up story about the border camps and everything? They were saying that we were putting concentration camps on the border because of Trump's policies down there, which was actually Obama implemented that and Trump overturned it. But anyway, so I wasn't too shocked because I did see a little bit of that when I was at Cal. But I will say when I was at Berkeley, I don't think, there is segments of the pro-Palestine faction that are extremely pro-Palestine, but there are also a lot of, especially the American students, it's more this anti-Western culture. And for them, Israel and America both represent Western culture, colonialism and everything. So it more has to do with that. So I was in no way shocked. I was disgusted still. But like I said, I was at Cal all those years. And I think people are just, they'll go along with every movement in order to get out there with their signs and feel like they're doing something. It's their religion on the left.
And when you see the kinds of slogans and everything that came out after the October 7th attack, I mean, they were projecting, I think it was a GW, from the river to the sea on a building at GW, which is a rallying cry of Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region to eliminate the entirety of the Jewish state. Harvard, which I know is supposed to be so fancy, right? Harvard had 30 student groups a year ago, almost to the day, because I think they came out within a couple of days of the attack. 30 different student groups came out and said that it was Israel's fault what happened on October 7th. I mean, even for me, I started in, I worked for U.S. Ambassador Dennis Ross, who was Clinton's negotiator for the Camp David Accords. I worked at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. I was on the CIA CTC desk. some of that stuff when they came out and I saw that at Harvard, I was like, this is insane. Like these people, they're blaming Israel for an attack that just happened.
I remember I commented and posted Bears for Palestine, which is Cal's Palestine group, and they were celebrating the people who went in and put babies in ovens and slaughtered families, to the point when I was like seeing these images on Twitter, I actually, it brought tears to my eye. Like I couldn't even, like, it just was so horrific. Like I thought 9/11 was the most horrific thing that could ever happen. And I do think this in some way was like more barbaric, and like the way that this attack was done. And so it just, I when I read that they were celebrating these people as martyrs, it was just, it's almost, you have to almost think, is this ignorance? Like they don't understand what they're supporting, and just the anti-Americanism throughout all of these through all of our colleges and through our education system has just brainwashed people? Or are these people truly like supporting evil? And I think that there's a lot of divisions in this country with especially young people, where people have a lot of malice for one another.
This week is the 1-year anniversary of the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1 year ago this week, Hamas terrorists killed 1,200 Israelis and took more than 250 hostages. A year later, you and I are both witnessing Israel in conflict with Hamas in an attempt to free the remaining hostages, as well as fighting back against Hezbollah's near-constant missile barrages and Iran's own massive barrage of nearly 200 ballistic missiles a week ago. Israel and her people are facing attacks from enemies on all sides. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground, providing food, shelter, and safety to those in need during this crisis. Since the war started, thousands of reservists have left their families to serve their country. Soldiers have been injured, and their families need your support. Your gift of $150 helps the fellowship provide food and other necessities to these families to help them survive. Thanks to a generous fellowship supporter, your gift will be matched, doubling in impact. Can you call today to make your $150 gift right now? 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. Or go online to supportifcj.org. That's supportifcj.org. All right. Thanks for being here on the Buck Brief, Jayme. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on, Buck. Have a great day.